Good morning, Saitlanders. How are you? We trust that you're well. A few days ago, I had a sort of a cyst cut out of my scalp. So it was under the scalp. It wasn't something on the brain or whatever. And it had been there since about 2000 and I think it was 2015 or 16. One of two things happened. I'm to this day not dead certain. Either I was pricked on the head by a bougainvillea branch, and I then picked at the scab, and it got dirty, and my body decided that it had to send material, I beg your pardon, to contain that thing, and just never stopped doing it. Or I had a zit, what do you call it, a pimple that I scratched. Either way, it's not a very good habit to scratch at things, but I like to get rid of them. I can't stand having stuff on me. And so I'm in the habit of getting rid of these things, which is not always a good idea. Nevertheless, this thing grew and grew and grew until I couldn't stand it anymore, and it just had to be gone. So I went to the doctor, and he did the operation. It came out looking, it had the consistency of a firm rubber. It was white, but with the consistency of a firm rubber, and exactly the shape of a jellyfish. The dome and the skirt of a jellyfish, minus the tendrils and tentacles. Just that dome, and then the crenulated skirt. You know, the skirt underneath is sort of irregular, up and down. And when I was in Orania for that operation, I ended up, for various reasons, having to go to Orania 3 times in 1 week, which is absolutely unusual for me. I seldom go there 3 times in a month, and probably not 3 times in 2 months usually. But there I was 3 times in a week in Orania, and in one of the conversations I held, the subject of emigres came up, people leaving. And it was brought to my attention for the first time that a very notable South African white liberal member of the ANC, married to a prominent politician, has recently emigrated. Now, for one or two reasons, I'm not going to mention the person's name to you. And if you don't mind, I won't even tell you what the reasons are. Let it suffice to say that we are on the subject of white liberals leaving South Africa because it's getting too hot in the kitchen. I'm trying to think of the name of an author, a very liberal white South African author. The author of, I'll get it for you now. It's on the tip of my tongue. That's right, Alan Paton, Cry the Beloved Country. Alan Paton's wife, Anne, outlived him by a long time. He predeceased her by decades. And I recall in the 90s or the early 2000s, I believe it was, a story in a newspaper of Anne Paton emigrating, going to live in England or returning to England. For all I know, she may have been born there. And I was disgusted by that story. It disgusted me that the people so very responsible for so much of the trouble that we're in, people who have looked down upon conservatives and conservatism and the old-fashioned, decent, respectable Christian ways, notwithstanding that even we are flawed. I am a deeply flawed person, and that's a fact. It's not a modest statement. It just is. notwithstanding that we are not perfect, there is a system that is good. And that is the old-fashioned, the conservative. I'm not talking about apartheid now. Nevertheless, these people who've done so much to erode so much of our values are now leaving like rats abandoning a sinking ship. I've spoken to you before, well, a long time ago, you may not remember it, about how the denizens of the northern suburbs of Johannesburg, the traditional, self-righteous, sanctimonious, English-speaking liberal who is quite intellectual and therefore can be trusted by a company to do the right thing as a manager or as a director, making good money, living in the leafy northern suburbs, how those people all prominently display a copy of Nelson Mandela's Long Walk to Freedom on their bookshelves. You've got to, if you walk in that, it is important to them that you should spot it. That you should not mistake the fact that they have read that book and that they are part of the new South Africa rainbow nation and that they were never a racist and their best friends are black. That is vital to them. And they do it up to the last day before they emigrate. They will leave that book on the shelf, prominently displayed in an eye-catching location until the very minute that they turn 180 degrees and abandon ship. Such people are detestable. And as I say, I was told last week that this person had emigrated with their family back to their family country. They were immigrants. They came to South Africa dog poor, looking for a new life. Did well in South Africa. Proceeded to tell us that everything that we cherished, our values, everything that we believed in was wicked and wrong and inferior and poor and detestable and worthy of being despised. They made a lot of money out of it and then, thank you very much, buggered off back home when it became too hot in the kitchen. When the filth, the crime, the anarchy, and the lawlessness of the government became less appealing and their pockets were full, thank you very much. As jy, how does it go? As dit pap reën moet jy skep. If it rains porridge, you should dish up. It's a disgrace. It's a disgrace. But what are you going to do? And on reflection, I had this thought in my mind about this blasted thing on my head. And as I said to you, in the preceding weeks prior to the operation, I shouldn't even call it an operation, really. It makes too much of it. Prior to the procedure, I just had this phrase in mind, it must be gone. It must just go. I couldn't stand it anymore. The lump. And I could feel it stretching the skin as it grew. You know, from time to time, the skin would give way. And I could feel that happen. And in between times, even when the skin wasn't giving way as it periodically did, there was still that pressure there. I could feel it. And I needed it to be gone. And I think that we can say the same of these liberals. Although what they're doing is dishonest in the last degree, it's probably the best that they be gone. And that they leave what is to come to us. Because what is coming in this country is something phenomenal, spectacular. There is no way, I've been saying this now for 6 years, prior to Mr. Miller giving, or rather, after Mr. Miller giving permission for Andre Coetzee and me to travel to the United States to do a brief tour, which eventually became a long tour, to raise awareness of Saatlanders and perhaps to raise money, which the latter we did not achieve. I did a whole lot of research to compose a PowerPoint presentation that I then presented in the USA. So we did gave speech after speech after speech with the assistance of a slideshow, as it were, PowerPoint slideshow. And in doing that work, I came up with a lot of my own phraseology and nomenclature. In other words, I was looking for the right words to say things in a particular way. And one of the things that I came up with, I mean, this is not creative genius or anything. This is normal. You're trying to think of the words that work to convey an alien idea to a foreign audience. And one of the descriptions or expressions that I came up with was the trajectory. The trajectory of South Africa is quite clear. It's identifiable by the progress or lack thereof of health, progress or lack thereof of education, progress or lack thereof in crime, progress or lack thereof in administration, progress or lack thereof in governance. You can track these things and you can ascertain a clear trajectory. Now, as a single item, as a unified thing, if you take all of those trajectories together and out of them you construct a trajectory that is a mathematical representation on a Cartesian plane between an X and a Y axis of the trajectory of South Africa, it is apparent that we are headed for a collision. It is apparent that sooner or later, this crisis must become terminal. It is apparent that sooner or later, South African society is going to rupture or fracture, if you like, largely along racial lines. Because of the nature of the society. It was always very predictable that if there would be, as there was in 1994, at roughly the time of our elections, an enormous civil war in Rwanda, that it would be between the Watutsi and the Hutu. That was inevitable. It was inevitable and very, very predictable that if there should be a breakup of South Slavia, of the southern Slavic states of the Soviet Union, or let's say the Eastern Bloc, I beg your pardon, the East Bloc, in Yugoslavia, South Slavia, that it would be ethnic in nature. Therefore, it's not as preposterous and provocative and nasty and ugly and what have you, for me to say that it is conspicuous that given the demography, the demographics of South Africa, and given the history and given the social tensions presently, and those that are being stirred up by our politicians such as Julius Malema when he said, I am not calling for the slaughter of all whites yet. Should there be a social catastrophe in South Africa, it shall rupture along ethnic lines, along racial lines. There are no two ways about it. And it is probably for the best that these liberals, these dilute characters, these lukewarm people are not here when it happens. So I say to all of those of you who've immigrated from South Africa as liberals, there's nothing wrong with immigration. My forefathers immigrated from Ireland to South Africa. People have been immigrating since forever. But if you are in a society trying to uplift your family, your history, your ancestry, trying to do better, you go there to feed off it like a tick or a flea or a mange mite, and you get fat, and in the process you turn on that society and that society's core values, and you get fatter again, and when it's enough for you, and when the society rots from the inside as you have caused it to do, by breaking down those core values in 100 different ways. When that happens, I shan't finish the sentence, and I apologize for that because I can't stand it when people don't finish their sentences. It drives me crazy. An American guy phoned me a couple of days ago to have a chat about something very, very, very interesting, absolutely fascinating. But as he began his description of what he wanted to talk about with me, I stopped him and I said, I don't want to be rude, but you've now spoken 5 half sentences without completing them. Finish your blasted sentences. And he did. And he's a superstar, and I have the world's respect for him. And when he writes as opposed to speaks, he has a talent for expressing ideas like nobody else I can think of. So it was all good. My point is just, it's a bad habit not to finish sentences, but it's probably for the best that I don't finish that sentence. Let the gist of this video be, they are abandoning ship like rats, and good riddance to them, good riddance to bad rubbish. Bug off! And let us take care of what is coming, because there is no doubt that the trajectory of this country cannot continue the way that it is, and there are no signs of it slowing down or stopping or reversing. Can continue the way that it is going without a tremendous collision. And that collision, sadly, is going to precipitate very dark events in this country, because that is the nature of the environment in which we find ourselves. Many poor and dispossessed people, many people being oppressed by law, having their land stolen from them, people living under the constant threat of the rape and the murder of their families on farms. There is so much unresolved tension that is now accelerating in its intensity, that when these events do occur, they're going to be cataclysmic. So, away with you, be gone. Like a cyst under my scalp, be gone. Thank you for watching this video. Please like, share, and subscribe. Please support us financially if you can by visiting Saitlanders.org. Homepage, scroll to the bottom. Saitlanders.org, go to the homepage there, scroll to the bottom, zip zap, you'll see how easy it is to donate to us. May God bless you and yours for the times that lie ahead of us. Bye-bye.